The gluttonous Prince Adrien swung the heavy legendary sword with zero grace. In a pathetic display of incompetence, he tripped over his own feet and fell forward. The blade of Gruhon pierced straight through his gut as he hit the ground. Deep within the steel, the ancient spirit of Gruhon felt a sudden, jarring connection. The legendary sword realized it had just killed the last descendant of its former master. To save the bloodline, the sword's soul poured itself into the dying prince's body. Adrien's eyes snapped open, glowing with a cold, unnatural violet light. Gruhon looked at his new hands and realized he was trapped in a mountain of fat. The legendary warrior knew he had to rebuild this pathetic vessel from scratch. Rumors of the stupid prince's recovery quickly spread throughout the royal palace. His father, the king, entered the room with a look of deep disappointment. Adrien did not bow, staring back at the king with newfound authority. The king noted the strange change in his son's usually cowardly eyes. He ordered the prince to remain confined until he lost his unsightly weight. Left alone, Gruhon began the grueling process of mana heart refinement. The fat in his body screamed as the ancient mana began to burn it away. Every breath felt like swallowing molten glass as he forced the mana to circulate. A maid arrived with a special medicine sent by the Queen Mother. Gruhon sensed a trace of mana within the bitter liquid of the medicine. He drank the entire concoction without a single complaint, shocking the maid. For weeks, the prince locked himself away, ignoring all royal invitations. Finally, the first circle of the mana heart solidified within his chest. A strange system window appeared before his eyes, showing his restored status. He realized this interface was identical to the messages he sent as a sword. His vision sharpened, and the sounds of the palace became crystal clear. His uncle, Count Bael Valahard, arrived to oversee his mandatory training. The Count declared that Adrien would be treated like a common soldier. Gruhon accepted the challenge, a dangerous smirk playing on his lips. He proposed a bet that he would make the Count acknowledge him in 6 months. Valahard laughed at the prince's arrogance but agreed to the terms. The training was brutal, involving thousands of repetitive sword swings. His obese body revolted, but Gruhon's spirit refused to let him stop. Valahard noticed the prince was using an ancient, low-level mana heart technique. He told Adrien that modern knights use superior mana currents instead. Gruhon secretly laughed, knowing the mana heart's true, forgotten power. He spent his nights reading ancient records about the founders of the kingdom. By the 4th month, his obese frame had started to transform into solid muscle. He began taking on duels from arrogant knights who wanted to mock him. With one strike, he shattered the aura of a single current knight. The entire court watched in silence as the bastard prince stood victorious. However, a mysterious hooded figure watched him from the shadows of the balcony. The elf sensed the unmistakable aura of the ancient dragon slayer within the boy. Adrien felt a chill down his spine as he looked toward the hidden watcher. He knew that the peace of the palace was about to be shattered forever. The hunt for the spirit of Gruhon had officially begun. The hunt for the spirit of Gruhon had officially begun, but first, this body needed to be reforged in the fires of discipline. Adrien sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor, focusing his internal energy on the dormant core within his chest. The process of forming a mana heart was like swallowing molten lead, burning away the impurities of his royal blood. He forced the chaotic mana to swirl into a singular rotating vortex near his solar plexus. With a sudden surge of pressure, the first circle of the mana heart solidified, sending a shockwave through the room. He stood up, feeling his muscles tighten and his senses sharpen to a razor-like edge. Outside the hall, a group of elite knights laughed while discussing the prince's latest failures. Captain Bael, the most vocal among them, joked about how the prince could barely lift a wooden sword. The heavy doors of the training hall creaked open, and Adrien stepped out into the blinding light. He looked at the knights and demanded they show him the true extent of their supposedly superior skills. Captain Bael stepped forward, his face twisting into a sneer at the prince's sudden bravado. Adrien didn't take a stance, simply holding his sword loosely at his side with an air of indifference. With a roar, Bael lunged forward, swinging his heavy blade in a wide, punishing arc. In a blur of motion, Adrien stepped into the captain's reach, his wooden sword striking with the speed of a viper. The wood cracked against Bael's wrist, forcing him to drop his weapon in a sudden fit of pain. Adrien didn't stop, following up with a heavy kick that sent the armored man sprawling into the dirt. The courtyard fell into a deathly silence as the other knights stared in utter disbelief. From the balcony above, a young woman with silver armor watched the entire exchange with narrowed eyes. This was Arwen, a knight of low birth but legendary potential who had been sidelined by the corrupt nobles. Adrien looked up at the balcony and called her name, summoning her to the sparring grounds. Arwen descended the stairs, her movements fluid and disciplined, unlike the clumsy knights Adrien had just defeated. He offered her a position as his personal guard, provided she could withstand 3 of his strikes. Arwen drew her blade, knowing that the man standing before her was no longer the prince she once knew. The first strike came like a thunderclap, their blades meeting in a shower of white-hot sparks. Arwen's arms shook from the sheer weight of the prince's blow, a strength that shouldn't exist in that body. She parried the second strike, but Adrien's movement was so efficient, it left her no room to counterattack. For the third strike, Adrien released a fraction of his purple mana, coating the wooden sword in a ghostly light. The impact sent Arwen's sword spinning into the sky, leaving her defenseless against the prince's point. She knelt before him, recognizing the aura of a true king and swearing her life to his cause. Word of the prince's sudden transformation reached the ears of the prime minister, a man who profited from Adrien's weakness. A royal banquet was announced, a trap designed to humiliate the prince in front of the entire diplomatic corps. Adrien arrived at the banquet dressed in simple yet perfectly tailored black and gold regalia. A corrupt duke approached, offering Adrien a plate of greasy meat with a condescending smirk about his appetite. Adrien took the plate and slowly crushed the porcelain in his hand, letting the shards and food fall to the floor. He leaned in close, telling the duke that those who feed the pigs should be careful not to fall into the pen. The room erupted into whispers as the nobles realized the gluttonous prince was gone, replaced by a predator. A messenger burst into the hall, his clothes torn and stained with blood from the northern border. He announced that the winter castle was under siege and the kingdom's northern defense was failing. Adrien stepped forward, volunteering to lead the reinforcements to the frozen front lines immediately. As he prepared to leave, he felt a strange, cold resonance coming from the mountain, as if something ancient was calling out to the sword spirit within him. But the message hadn't mentioned orcs, it had mentioned a shadow that could swallow the sun. The carriage wheels groaned as they finally halted before the towering, frost-covered gates of Winter Castle. Adrien stepped into the biting wind, his royal cloak fluttering like a wounded bird. Count Valahard looked at the prince with a mixture of hidden respect and lingering skepticism. Suddenly, the alarm bells atop the ramparts shattered the silence of the tundra. A ranger pointed toward the mountain pass where a shadow began to swallow the horizon. Thousands of orcs emerged from the tree line, their guttural roars echoing through the valley. Adrien ignored the panic of the soldiers and slowly drew his new blade, Twilight. He commanded his knights Arwen and Adelia to prepare for a flanking maneuver. The prince leapt from the high wall, his mana heart pulsing with ancient resonance. He hit the ground in a crater of ice, sending a shockwave that staggered the front line of orcs. The first orc swung a heavy mace, but Adrien parried it with effortless grace. With a single horizontal sweep, the prince cleaved through 3 monsters at once. Arwen joined the fray, her silver armor gleaming under the pale moon. Adelia moved like a shadow, her hidden mana heart granting her unnatural speed. Adrien began to recite the verses of the poem of vengeance. Each word he spoke caused the air itself to tremble with the weight of history. A giant blast of mana erupted from his sword, obliterating the orc battalion's center. From the rear of the orc army, the orc king stepped forward to challenge the prince. The monster spoke in the ancient tongue, demanding a duel for the honor of his legion. Adrien smirked, his eyes burning with the spirit of the sword Gruhon. He accepted the challenge, ordering his soldiers to stand down and witness the end. The orc king charged, his massive axe whistling through the frozen air. Adrien spun away from the strike, the blade missing him by a hair's breadth. The prince counterattacked, his sword leaving a trail of purple light across the monster's chest. The orc king roared in pain, swinging his axe in a desperate, wild circle. Adrien stood his ground, blocking the massive weapon with only the tip of his blade. He realized the monster was also a master of its own martial poem. Adrien concentrated, pushing his mana heart to its absolute limit. He invoked the final verse of the Dragon Slayer's Requiem. With a final blinding thrust, Adrien pierced the heart of the Orc King. The massive monster fell to its knees, nodding in silent acknowledgement of a superior warrior. Adrien sheathed his sword, his body trembling from the massive expenditure of mana. The remaining orcs turned and fled back into the mountains, their spirits broken. The soldiers of Winter Castle cheered, their voices rising in a roar that echoed through the valley. Vincent approached and handed Adrien the red banner of the defeated legion. The prince raised the flag high, his silhouette striking against the rising sun. Count Valahard knelt before the prince, officially recognizing him as the future of the kingdom. Adrien looked toward the horizon, knowing the threat of the elven princess still loomed. But for now, the north was safe, and the bastard prince was a bastard no longer. He was Adrien Leonberger, the reborn sword prince, and his legend had only just begun.